Hey there guys, it's Jesse, and today we're taking on Alysrazor, one of the starting bosses in the Firelands, in World of Warcraft Cataclysm. This, my friends, is a long fight. I mean like old school MMO long. We're talking 15 minutes, multiple stages, several enemies, and for you longtime players, what could easily be called the Dance 3.0. But for all its chaotic forms, this fight is essentially this expansion's ad fight, like Lady Deathwhisper in Wrath. And like Lady Deathwhisper, each ad has their own abilities and strats, not to mention the additional problem of dealing with the boss and her abilities. So, in order to prevent an hour-long strat video, we're going to cover this one a tad differently. I'll simply say, check your dungeon journal in the game for details, and I'll cover the stuff that is most important that you need to worry about. Unlike the other boss guides I've done, since this one has so many phases associated with this fight, instead of doing abilities then a breakdown, we're just going to do the whole thing at once and break it down by phase. So follow along, because this one's going to be a doozy. Phase 1, also known as the ad phase, revolves around the inclusion of 2 voracious hatchlings, multiple ads, and the boss timer that takes to phase 2. You have roughly 3 minutes to do this, which means you must kill the hatchlings before you hit phase 2, or you're in for a certain wipe. When the fight begins, the group is drawn into the center of the room for a short scene with Vandal Staghelm. Once Alysrazor appears, you need to quickly heal, and then if you're in 25, split the raid into 2 sides. Each side of the room, left or right, will handle one of the hatchlings, as well as any Blazing Talon initiates that show up to help. The initiates are fairly weak, but they have the ability to lay roaming brush fires that move around the battlefield and do a lot of damage, and they also do a fire blast that does 40k damage. And you need to interrupt this, because what happens, if they get that cast off, they get a 10% buff to damage and casting speed. Also, while the hatchlings are being dealt with, lava worms spawn around the room. They spew molten fire for 40,000 damage a second in a spinning frontal cone. If you get caught in it, kiss your butt goodbye. And of course, the last and most important thing are the hatchlings themselves. Upon hatching from their eggs, they will imprint on the nearest player, attacking only that player. But the player gains 1,000 attack damage on that hatchling. This, of course, means your tank needs to be the only person near the hatchling when it hatches. And since all the hatchling's abilities have a frontal cone attack, you need to have the tank turn it away from everybody else. And if you're not a tank, get behind those things. Now, the trick to the hatchlings is that they aren't just a simple tank and spank. During the course of the fight, they'll become hungry. While in this state, they have a 20% chance on hit to throw a tantrum. If they throw a tantrum, they gain 100% increased attack speed and damage. How do you deal with this? You simply lure the hatchling to one of the lava worms, and they'll gobble it up. They lose their hungry effect and any chance of getting tantrum. However, this will happen several times during this phase, so you have to keep a lookout for those worms. Meanwhile, while all of this is going on around you, yes, I know, there's more. While all of this is going on, the boss circles overhead, occasionally dropping down to swipe at the raid. But while that's easily avoided, after she's done swiping, you'll notice she leaves behind feathers. If you pick these feathers up, they can give you certain bonuses. By picking up 1 feather, you enable the ability to cast while moving. 2 feathers grants you an additional 30% movement speed, and 3 feathers grants you Wings of Flame, which allows you to fly for 20 seconds. What's so good about flying for 20 seconds, you may ask? Well, while the raid engages the ads below, 1 or 2 players can inflict damage on the boss while she's outside of the fight, allowing you to get the upper hand and a quicker victory. While in the air, the boss will throw out several rings that you need to constantly fly through to keep your flight buff up, and increase your crit chance and haste. However, some of the rings are bad, and will remove one of your feather buffs. If you can avoid the bad rings and consistently stay on the boss during phase 1, a single DPSer, preferably a dotting class, can whittle her life down by roughly 10%. The biggest tip my guildies who went up told me is that you need to be extra careful of where you land, as there will be plenty of ads that can kill you, or if you're transitioning into phase 2, there's a lot of other stuff that can kill you there too. After the timer for phase 1 expires, Alysrazor will begin to spin around the room calling fiery tornadoes into the fight. These tornadoes must be avoided, as getting hit by even 1 could result in your death. And the sad fact is that if you try to play it smart and move to the center of the room or to the far outside to avoid the reach of the tornadoes, you'll receive one of 2 debuffs, either Fiery Vortex or Harsh Winds, and both will kill you. So, you must dance with the tornadoes. Luckily for you, we've done this so much that I've distilled your choreography options down to 3 things. The first is to run in and out, moving towards the center and then back out, avoiding the tornadoes as they pass. The next is to start the phase by selecting a nearby tornado and then imagining an invisible circle around it. Once you have that in your head, follow that circle, and miraculously, you will not be hit by any tornadoes. And the final one, which I believe is the easiest solution, if you can, grab 2 feathers. When the tornado spawns, just pick one and follow it. You'll be so fast that you'll be able to stay right behind it and avoid all the other tornadoes completely. I will say this though, while you have your options on how to avoid the tornadoes, this is one of those things that requires a bit of practice for everyone to get down, because a lot of people just aren't good at movement fights. And chances are, if you come out of this phase with 4 or more players dead, you're looking at an eventual wipe. Trust me, it's already bad enough wiping, but it's way worse to do it 13 minutes into a boss fight. It's better just to call it and start the fight over. I have some other tips for this phase as well. When the tornadoes first spread out, they will do no damage. So if one lands on you, don't spaz out. Simply calm yourself, move, and be ready. Also, if you happen to get hit during this phase, you won't die right away. In fact, if you don't panic and don't attempt to adjust your course crazily or anything, you may actually survive by simply continuing to do what you've been doing the entire time and move in the same pattern. Trust me, don't panic. If you panic, that's how you die during phase 2. And if you manage to make it past phase 2, she'll expend all of her energy trying to kill you with the tornadoes, burn out, and fall to the ground. During this new phase, she'll be completely out of commission, so you stack up, heal up, and unload your DPS on her. Also, any spells cast on her restore 10% of your maximum mana too, so any healers out there, when you're done healing up the raid, throw some DPS on her and regain that mana. Anyway, while you're DPSing, she will slowly begin to regenerate her molten power. At this time, Blazing Talon Claw Shapers will arrive to help speed up the process. As long as you have a tank or something to slow them down, you should be able to get a fair amount of DPS done on the boss. When she reaches 50% molten power, she ignites again, but still remains on the ground, allowing you to do some more damage. However, in this new phase, phase 4, she attacks the raid, doing massive AoE damage, so remaining stacked is preferable for healing. After she hits 100% molten power, she'll do a knockback and return to the sky. After she does this, everyone needs to continue to remain stacked, just for a few seconds so the healers can get most of the raid up. Then you simply return to your phase 1 spots, and the cycle starts all over again. And that's it. It's a long, drawn-out fight with many phases, many ways to die, but in the end, is essentially a how long can you avoid stuff fight. There is no enrage timer, and like I said, it literally takes 10 to 15 minutes to kill this boss. The key to this fight is patience and surviving phase 2. Once you get the hang of it, the other 3 phases are simple, but phase 2 will always be the one that sets apart the orcs from the gnomes. And that, my friends, is the fight. If I can do it, so can you. Thanks for watching, thumbs up, subscribe, and as always, to be continued.